After 1,000 plus chapters, our small pirate from the East Blue has grown all the way to a legendary Yonko. That's right, the bombastic Buggy has become an emperor of the sea. And today we're gonna be trying to figure out how exactly did that happen. Does it even make sense? Did he defeat the SSG? Did he recruit some warlords? We're gonna be looking at all the options today. But before we get to that, I just need you to hit that subscribe button and join our King Pirates crew so you don't miss future videos like this one. And also thank you to Surfshark for sponsoring this video, but more on that later. Alright, but let's just start things off by just talking about the idea of Buggy as a Yonko, because there was all sorts of reactions. I think most people liked it, but I saw that some people didn't like it, some people didn't get it, and it's completely fine if you didn't like it. But for me personally, the idea of Buggy becoming a Yonko makes complete sense. Initially, when we found out that there were going to be some new Yonko, like many other people, I thought that Kid and Law were going to be the other two options besides Luffy. But after I had some time to really think about it and the idea of Buggy as a Yonko came into my head, it made all the sense in the world to me. Because ever since what Buggy did at Impel Down and Marineford, this has been the path for his character. After the time skip, he became a warlord, and I felt like if you're gonna go that far, you might as well just keep going with it. Like, if you're already gonna make him a warlord, why stop there? The story's gonna progress and you have to one-up that. And so the next step after warlord for Buggy was becoming a Yonko. Now I do think this is probably gonna be his peak and he's not gonna take another step up and become the Pirate King. But yeah, Buggy is a character that Oda absolutely loves, so there was no way he was just gonna stop using him after he became a warlord. And although at the end of the day this is a major gag, it does also make sense story-wise, because Oda hasn't just used Buggy as a funny character, but he's also given him some real history. Buggy, just like Shanks, was an apprentice on the legendary Roger Pirates, which gives him a connection and a relationship to a current Yonko and Shanks, and even a connection to Luffy as well. So the notoriety for Buggy has always been there since the beginning, and this is clearly something Oda has set up. But even more so, Buggy's progression after the events of Marineford is what really makes this make sense. Because to this day, as far as we know, Buggy himself is still weak, and the world government knows that. He didn't become a warlord because the world government valued his strength. Instead, it's the strength of his crew that he built up by recruiting all of those Impel Down prisoners after Marineford. So at the end of the day, what made Buggy a threat was his influence and manpower, and coincidentally, that's one of the major things that make a Yonko. We saw it from the Whitebeard pirates the moment we met them as they waged war against the entire Marines. In the last two arcs, we've seen how much manpower and control the Big Mom pirates and the Beast pirates both have. Even the Blackbeard pirates, after becoming a Yonko crew, have expanded their tiny crew into these many fleets. And of course, the most recent example is Luffy. After Whole Cake Island, he was on the verge of becoming a Yonko, partially because he went into Big Mom's territory and defeated Katakuri, but more importantly, they were really starting to consider him as a Yonko because of his leadership and influence. Not only with Big News Morgan's hyping him up as a leader, but also the manpower that he gained with the Grand Fleet. That manpower, along with Luffy's influence, was a big reason why he was being considered as a Yonko and why he's become one now. So across the board, influence and manpower and territory are a big part of what makes a Yonko, because they're the emperors of the sea. And when you start looking at all the other candidates that could have been a Yonko, Buggy's really the only one that checks that box. Because Law and Kid, although they put in a ton of work, which was reflected with their bounty, with both of them jumping to 3 billion, they just simply don't have the manpower. Their crews are not strong. I've said time and time again that they're just merchandise and cheerleaders. Law's entire crew is merchandise. John Bart, I'm pretty sure he did more as a slave for the Celestial Dragons than as a heart pirate. Kid, at least you can say he has Killer, but besides Killer, you don't really have anybody else. So although Kid and Law put in work during Wano, their crews just don't make them much of a threat. And the same is kind of true for the other warlords. Mihawk and Weevil, both individually incredibly strong, but both of them are just solo. Boa Hancock is probably the only other person you can make a case for, given she has just an entire island of very strong soldiers. But at the same time, that's still a country. It's not like an entire fleet of pirates that she can just mobilize. So in terms of manpower and influence and just overall threat, Buggy's crew was probably the most qualified. But of course, there's definitely more to the story, and I'll be talking about that next. But first, I want to let you guys know about Surfshark VPN, because although Buggy has gained a ton of notoriety, you probably don't want to do that, and Surfshark VPN can help you with that. With Surfshark VPN, you can browse the internet safely by encrypting the information from your device to the internet. Essentially, Surfshark changes your IP address with a new one which replaces your location, and the best part is you can choose wherever you want to go. This comes in very handy when you're streaming shows, movies, or anime. Like by switching your location to a US location with Surfshark, you can get access to Crunchyroll's largest anime library. You can do the same with other streaming apps such as Netflix to get access to all the exclusives you're looking for. On top of that, Surfshark has 3,200 plus servers in 95 countries, so there's plenty of of choices to choose from. Surfshark also has you covered across multiple devices, as it comes as a desktop app, mobile app, or a browser extension. And the best part is Surfshark is currently giving away an incredible 83% off plus 3 free months if you use my promo code I'mDKing. And on top of that, Surfshark is also giving away their antivirus for free in the month of June. There's even a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there's no risk in trying it out. So please help support the channel and download Surfshark using the link in the description. And be sure to use my promo code I'mDKing to get that amazing deal. And now back to the video. Okay, but back on the topic of Buggy, at this point we know he has the manpower, but that's not all it takes to become a Yonko. Because at the end of the day, you really have to be an incredibly dangerous threat to the world government, and most of the time that's going to require some elite top-end talent to really back you up. Shanks and the Red Hair Pirates are probably the best example for this, because despite having smaller manpower and a much smaller crew than everybody else, he has some incredibly strong and elite officers across the board on his crew, including himself. So overall, his crew still has that strength to really pose as a threat. So for Buggy, although he has a lot of strong manpower, as far as we know, he doesn't really have any elite top-tier talent. And that matters a lot, especially when he himself is not very strong. So what exactly happened to propel him forward all the way to becoming a Yonko? Well, the first option I think we have to look at is him getting a major feat. Of course, the last time we saw him, the Marines were on his ass. He rallied his troops to fight, but he was trying to run. Now that we know he's a Yonko, at the very least, he should have defeated all those Marines there. But just defeating those Marine fleets, I still don't feel like is enough for him to become a Yonko. I think it has to be more than that for him to really prove his strength. And to me, it comes down to two options. Either he defeated an admiral or some of the SSG. And I think the more likely option out of these two is probably defeating the SSG. Because Buggy and his crew defeating an admiral, while it's entirely possible, I just don't think it's as realistic. Because if Buggy became a Yonko through a major feat, I'm guessing it happened in a fluky way, because that's just how it goes for him. And I just don't see an admiral losing to Buggy in a fluky way, because even if it does happen, like Kizaru gets accidentally blown up by like a bunch of Buggy bombs, at the very least I expect him to know like, oh, that was an accident and Buggy's not really a threat. So I think the more likely option here is Buggy defeating the SSG. For those that don't remember, the SSG is this new science group that was created by Vegapunk to replace the Warlords. Currently we don't know what the SSG is and what their powers are, but given that they were created to replace the Warlords, what better way to prove that and showcase their power than to have them capture and defeat the Warlords? Especially when the Marines and the world government have so many different things to worry about with the events of the Reverie, and recently we just saw Green Bull go to Wano. So the SSG had to be utilized, and they could have been Buggy's opponents. And while I don't have a confident theory about what the SSG is, I can totally see him getting defeated in a fluky way. Don't get me wrong, I fully expect the SSG to be strong, but given that they're a new experiment and a new creation, there could be some mistakes. Like for example, if they turn out to be insanely strong pacifistas, maybe there's a malfunction and Buggy wins by accident. Or if it turns out to be the theory that I currently believe in the most, which is Vegapunk creating artificial devil fruits, because that's something that's been really building up with Vegapunk experimenting on Kaido and Momonosuke's devil fruits. So if that theory comes true, maybe we see some actual people with some artificial devil fruits, but even then there could be some mistakes and they turn out to have like smiles by accident or something like that. One way or another, Buggy getting a major feat by some fluke and this being a big gag is definitely one of the most likely options of how Buggy became a Yonko. But what if it actually wasn't a gag? Because as much as this could make sense as a gag, becoming a Yonko is a pretty big deal. So could Oda have actually made Buggy's crew insanely strong? Possibly. And one way to do that is Buggy recruiting some insanely strong new members, and this is where the other Warlords come in. Because just like Buggy, they were also getting attacked by the Marines, probably the SSG as well, maybe an Admiral. And even for some of the strongest Warlords that end up defeating the Marines, they're still now wanted pirates, and it's gonna be a hassle for them. So let's just say someone like Mihawk, who does rise solo and he doesn't want to get bothered and hassled. If because of that he ends up teaming up with Buggy, now we're talking about a serious Yonko crew. Because Mihawk, I am certain, is an absolute monster. So if he ends up joining Buggy for whatever reason, you now have a top tier elite member along with the manpower and influence that Buggy already had. Now of course you're probably wondering why the hell would he join Buggy? Well, there is the loose connection through Shanks. As a matter of fact, one thing a lot of people have strongly theorized is that Mihawk does end up joining the Red Hair Pirates and teaming up with them for the time being. And maybe because of that, when the Straw Hats meet up with the Red Hair Pirates, Mihawk is there as well, and that's when we'll see Zoro versus Mihawk come to a conclusion. But what if that's actually not the case and Shanks is off doing something else and he's busy and Mihawk can't get to him? So instead he ends up finding one of Shanks' friends in Buggy and decides to team up with him. And that right there could be enough for Buggy to become a Yonko, even if Mihawk didn't like necessarily join him and is only doing it temporarily. Big News Morgans can just completely spin the story to whatever he wants. Now one thing I will say, if this happens, I don't see Buggy going out of his way to recruit Mihawk. The last time we saw him, clearly he was just trying to run away and just save his own ass. So if Mihawk does end up joining Buggy, he definitely did it on his own accord after like defeating the Marines that were going after him. Besides Mihawk though, there is one more warlord that could have joined Buggy as well, and that is Boa Hancock. This one I think is much more unlikely and much more difficult because Boa has like an entire country of women to look after. She also lives in a country that doesn't allow men, so it'd be hard to see her teaming up with Buggy. But maybe for some reason she just ended up in a situation where she needed to team up with somebody else to really get some help to save her people. And maybe this entire point is just me being worried about Boa getting captured, so I'm hoping she joins up with Buggy so that she's okay. But yeah, as far as the connection between them, there's a very loose one through Luffy because Buggy and Luffy kind of work together during Impel Down and Marineford. So maybe because that, Boa sees Buggy as an ally to Luffy, but once again, that's a pretty weak connection because at the end of the day, Buggy and Luffy are enemies. So I think this one is a much weaker argument than the Mihawk one, and it's more of just a fun discussion. But besides Boa, there's really no other suitable candidates. Weevil's by himself, Kuma is a slave. So if Buggy's crew actually got strong enough to become a Yonko crew, the only option I see is Mihawk with a really far away chance for Boa. But now we get to our last option, which is how about the captain himself actually gets strong? What if this man that was on the Roger Pirates, this absolute legend that rallied all these Impel Down prisoners together, actually became a god? Probably not gonna happen, but not entirely impossible. At the end of the day, it's way more realistic that it's just a gag and Buggy became a fluky Yonko. But can you imagine the hype if it turns out that Buggy is actually just a beast now? Like in the middle of this do or die, about to get captured by the Marines, he actually awakens and becomes a very capable person. And now he's no longer just a fluky figurehead, but an actual Yonko that's worthy of his title. Again, probably not gonna happen, but let's entertain the idea. Because after all, let's not forget that this man is a swordsman's worst nightmare. Even Mihawk couldn't cut him up. So his devil fruit, while it's been pretty weak, is kind of interesting, especially if we think about awakening. I've seen some people bring up this idea that he's able to split his atoms and kind of just completely dissipate himself. I think the idea was mainly inspired by his title change to Bombastic Buggy. But even though that power sounds cool, I'm not sure it's gonna be like that effective. I guess it would allow him more flexibility to like really disappear out of people's sights and just reappear and attack people. But at the end of the day, I really think his nickname is just like an elevation of his personality. Like bombastic means like really outgoing and outlandish, and which is exactly what Buggy is. But back to the idea of his awakening, with him being a paramecia, that does make things kind of interesting. Because if he's able to apply his powers to the surrounding environment and other people, that could be kind of broken. Because all of a sudden, he's not just cutting himself up, he's cutting up the entire earth. In terms of just destructive power, the man could be cutting up mountains and trees and forests and the ground and everything. What could be even crazier if he's able to apply it to other people like we saw Kid do with his powers. Because now all of a sudden, he's not just a swordsman's worst nightmare, he becomes a swordsman without a sword. He can straight up just start slicing people apart and just disassembling them like he has the reality stone from the MCU. And if we want to go a step even further than that, we saw with Whitebeard's Guruguru no Mi, he could shatter the air. What if Buggy's literally able to just like slice up the air and reality as we know it? Again, probably not gonna happen, but not entirely impossible. But no, honestly, if you think about it, Buggy's devil fruit could be really interesting if he's actually able to awaken it. And if there was one man in the story that I expect to achieve greatness, it would of course be the Bombastic Buggy. But that's gonna do it for this video. Once again, thank you to Surfshark for sponsoring this video. Make sure to go download it below and use my promo code I'mDKing. And once again, we're going with a quick game of rock, paper, scissors. If you lose, you have to like, subscribe, and watch the next video. Rock, paper, scissors, shoot.